The Navigating Disability podcast often discusses topics including disability, injury, mental health, and mentions of sensitive issues such as trauma and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care while listening. Welcome to Navigating Disability. Today we're joined by Jeramy Hope, a husband, father of four, and passionate disability advocate living with functional neurological disorder, otherwise known as FND. Jeramy's journey with FND has been marked by chronic pain, tremors, and a challenging path to diagnosis. Through his blog, My FND Journey, Jeramy shares a raw and honest reflection on navigating his life with a misunderstood condition, the complexities of seeking support, and the resilience found in family advocacy. Join us as we explore Jeramy's story of perseverance and his mission to shed light on FND. Welcome, Jeramy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Kay. Thank you, Jen. My pleasure.
Can you start from the start with your journey with FND? How did that all happen?
I had a workplace injury when I was 20. So 26 years ago, I had a workplace injury as an assistant nurse and damaged my back. And so as a result, I've had chronic pain for the last 26 years. And from that, probably 15 years ago, started getting some neurological symptoms that I just pretended weren't there. So leg drops and tremors and other things, and thought I probably should start exploring what's going on about 10 years ago. And it was a very difficult time, probably from 2016 to probably 2020, where they threw probably 10, 12 different diagnoses on me, and it didn't really fit. And I had to go from ranging from people didn't believe me. I was either looking for medication, looking for attention, or had some significant mental health issues or whatever it needed to try and fit into a bucket, but nothing quite fit, and I wasn't getting better. And so I kept trying to push for what is a response. And so we landed on FND in 2020 as a diagnosis. But what that meant for me was every 12 weeks, I'd spend a month in rehab in hospital. I'd then do 8 weeks of intensive outpatient support. Private health would stop paying for any services. I'm very fortunate that I can afford private health, but that was a revolving cycle for 2 to 3 years, and that was my life. And it actually cost me my last job because it was those reasonable adjustments. It just couldn't make sense to people that you could function from a mental capacity, you're able to be articulate and work, but sometimes there's just a disconnect in the way the wiring of the brain worked. And so my legs didn't work, or I had cognitive fatigue and just had to learn to do things differently. And it was a significant journey to be believed. And even today, do I manage a flare-up at home and deal with extreme pain and a lot of the other things that come, or do I go to hospital? Because I know if I go to hospital, it's a telling of a story for 36 hours, having someone believe me and finding that right doctor who actually hears me. And once I'm heard, then we're actually able to get to solution and get some help. But that being heard is a near impossible solution. And so I try and stay away as much as I can. I've been an NDIS participant now just short of 2 years, and so I haven't been in hospital for 2 years. And so it's been life-changing, but it's that misinformation and that misunderstanding of diagnosis has been that roadblock and that disconnect both of the health system and any help from a disability perspective.
Can I just ask, Jeremy, you made a comment before that said being believed was near impossible. Can you expand on that a little bit? Because that's so vitally important to people that are going through the diagnostic journey, whether it's for FND or whether it's for autism or anything else. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. It's being believed for me. It actually being jumped around between doctors and specialists does not do a lot of good for your mental health. It really, you start questioning whether what is going on with you is that actually reality and truth, or am I manufacturing, or is this something that's going on? And so a lot of the wrestle for me was, I know that what I'm saying is real. My family can see what's real. And what was horrific is, while I'm trying to prove a diagnosis, I was falling over 20 to 30 times a week. And I still do now, but that's a whole other issue. But like, so I was physically injuring myself. I was in significant pain. I was in between wheelchairs and walkers, and the elements of proof I had to go through. So a GP, it wasn't enough. A pain specialist wasn't enough. A neurologist wasn't enough. Seeing a physio wasn't enough. An OT wasn't enough. It was, how do you somehow, as a layperson without a medical degree, make all of these different people try and believe a concurrent story and try and come on a journey with you? And what I had to do was constantly tell my story, constantly plead for someone to believe that what I'm saying is truth. And
And
then
that's
from that,
exhausting.
it was very exhausting. And look, I think the fierce tenacity to do that was driven from 7 years prior doing exactly the same thing for my daughter who has autism. And it was the particularly, she's got autism, and no one believed the autism diagnosis because she was a girl and she was articulate and her special interests were similar to those with girls. And so I think the fire in my belly, because of the injustice of not believing an 11-year-old, and that disbelief of her, ended up, I had to take her into a locked facility for a month. It was the worst thing I've ever done in my life. And have a specialist ask me if I'd like to relinquish my child. And I said, like, I didn't ask for relinquishment. I asked for help. And I think the reason I kept pushing was, I knew my truth. I knew that what the problem was is, particularly with rare diagnosis, is that what I understood very quickly was the specialists in Australia didn't understand what I was going through. And there was a level of ignorance there. And so a lot of my journey for the last 10 years has been educating medical professionals in what is wrong with me, which is exhausting, is wrong. And then when you try and overlay that with trying to have a sort of a social model of the NDIS sort of put over the top of that, you then need to try and explain that congruently across those 8 specialists in the same language, in the same way, which is near impossible, mind you. And some of the complexities were very simple. Was everyone wanted to keep working towards a cure. So how do we fix you? So it was, are you fully treated? Why aren't you better yet? Can we do one more test or do one more thing? And what I was trying to explain to people is, this is just who I am. I've learned that I have to furniture hop to be able to walk and get around. I've learned that I'm my best in my mornings. I've learned that if I don't use my assistive tech, I'm gonna, and my aids, I'm going to fall over. I've learned that I've got to slow down and be sensible. So I've learned all these tools, but that doesn't mean I'm cured. It just means that I've got an extra set of obstacles I've got to go through each day to function. And that's just who I am.
So can I just ask Jeremy, and sorry for the naive question, I've never heard of FND before. Is that similar to MS or Parkinson's within the tremors and the pain and things like that and the mobility issues?
Yeah, so for my case, the answer is yes. So FND is a blanket diagnosis
Okay.
because you don't fit anywhere else. So it's a disconnect between sort of a misfiring of connections in the nervous system.
Yeah.
So your brain is not communicating correctly. So it doesn't talk from mobility, from tremors to seizures to pain, all of those things. It just misfires and gets confused. And in my instance, I very much have near identical diagnosis to MS. I just don't have the organic matters, like I don't have the lesions or anything like that. So it's a still a very misunderstood diagnosis simply because it doesn't fit. And so the diagnosis comes from a term that was called convergence disorder. And it used to be in the DSM-5, it used to be classed as a mental health disorder simply because there was an assumption that people were mad and weren't coping, and it was a stress relater. Now, there is elements of truth that most often there is a trigger point in life that causes FND or is a start, and so that could be a traumatic event. So it's a very common diagnosis for people that have been abused, domestic violence things. So something that has been a very clear bang event. People that have had a fairly nasty hospital experience. So something's gone quite wrong in hospital, taken a long time to get better and get through that, and haven't healed properly. F&D can often come after that, or there's something else. And so the something else for me has been that there's been a pain sensor that hasn't sort of repaired itself, and then that's generated for me.
Right. Okay. So with all sorry, Kate, I'm very interested because you've been through a lot, and we find that with a lot of our guests that we speak to. But from your diagnosis and pretty much trying to have people believe you, it takes a lot of resilience and perseverance. How did you manage that on your toughest days? You know, being a dad of four and a husband and trying to navigate all the intricacies of that. What did you do to cope with all of that?
If I'm very honest, probably the first 5 years was not very well. And so it's very easy to get stuck in if I drink, if I work too hard, if I hide. And I was very angry because I couldn't do the things I liked. I couldn't invest in the family, which was important to me. And so my love language, what I love to do is that I'm available, present, and with family. So I cook the meals, I do the washing, and they're the things that I love to do. And I couldn't do those things anymore. That was taken away. So first 5 years I was very angry, but what I didn't do in those first 5 years is I decided that I'd pretend that nothing was wrong. So I just kept running. So I was running really, really fast. I'd crash. I'd run really, really fast. I'd crash. And so the last 3 years, I've been seeing a pain psychologist. And so that's changed my life significantly. And I'm a person. I've come from a family with very complex mental health disorders, and so it was very difficult for me to go and ask for help. And so, but to sit with my pain psychologist and do some very, very simple things which is, how do I slow down? How do I find enjoyment despite the obstacles that I face every day? And then we did some basic things. What is my function? So what are my tolerance levels? So how long can I sit in a chair without being comfortable, without being uncomfortable? How long can I drive? How long can I stand up? And so we measured benchmarks, and then we set each other goals, and then we also did some common sense around pacing. And so it was, it's probably not realistic to work 50, 60 hours a week and run hard. So what should be your reality be? And so I learned some basic leadership tools and some basic self leadership tools around slowing down. And so I changed jobs. I worked part-time. I focused on making sure therapy was a priority. So I started building a routine of, instead of being angry, instead of drinking, instead of doing other things, what I knew was important was balance. So if I exercise, if I eat well, if I clear my head by listening to good music, if I go for a walk, I feel better. When I feel better, I get more done. I'm more present for work. I'm more present for family. And so I think being honest and clear with me, having someone that I could call me out and be honest. And we've been on a 3-year journey together, and I still don't get it right. And I still push hard. I got home from Brisbane at 10:30 last night, and so I push myself too hard sometimes. But those things have helped, and we've changed what fun looks like. The things that I love to go bushwalking. I can't do 10, 15K bushwalks anymore. So we go to concerts, we go to plays, and we go, and we're busy in things that are fun but are accessible. And so my daughter puts her headphones on, and she uses all the things that helps her with self-soothing and calm. I've got my walker and other things that I need to keep myself safe. And then family comes and supports, and we do things together, but differently.
What I'm hearing, Jeremy, is you saying that you put so much pressure on yourself with things that you should be able to do, and you kept trying to do them, and then you're a failure because you couldn't do it. When you actually change that around and say, well, hang on, what am I capable of doing? And let's work on that and to that schedule. It's almost a change of mindset. Did you
Yeah.
ever feel like giving up?
Yes.
And why didn't you?
Wow. That's a very good question. So yes, I did feel like giving up. And I think some of that was the expectations I put on myself, astronomical. And what I had to, and the why I didn't was very simple. I've got a wife, we've been married for 25 years, I've got 4 wonderful children. I want to be around and be present and be able to play and be in the lives of my grandkids, and I've got, and to do that, I need to pay off a mortgage. I need to make sure I can provide for my kids. The disability pension does not cover my daughter's medical bills. So we still pay for more than half, 80% of those. And so I think the driver was, what are the most important things in my life? And it wasn't, I love my job. I love advocacy. I love mentoring leaders. But the most important thing was seeing my kids, seeing my wife. And so I had to learn that. And once I learned that, that sort of gave clarity. And it didn't mean I couldn't do the things I loved, because I love studying, I love pushing myself, I love doing other things. But it meant that the purpose of doing that was different. And that changed everything. And that's probably been only the last couple years that I've really realized that change.
So, what would your best piece of advice be for the community out there that feels stuck in their circumstance and just having a really hard time in acceptance, in trying to find the help?
Wow. One thing is, one thing that's really bothering me at the moment, if I could tell a bit, is there's droves of people leaving the NDIS at the moment. There's droves of people giving up because it's too hard. Now, number one, it is too hard. Number two, it's not fair. And number three, the most vulnerable people missing out because they don't know how to navigate a very complex scheme. And so it seems impossible. And what we've got to do is we need to pause and we need to go, how and who can I ask for help? And I think that the most difficult thing I did is I thought 25 years in the disability sector, basically, I thought that I was too big and knew too much to ask for help. And I had to ring an advocacy service and ask for help. Now, it took me three to be able to find where do I find someone that fits and that knew how to fight. But I needed to find that person that would sit with me at ART, would sit with me and work through an uncomfortable decision that didn't go my way. But what we can't do is accept that our current situation is good enough, because it's not. We can't sit there and say that you don't deserve to have a better life, to have the supports, to live in a house that is purpose built and suitable for you. You can't say just because there's a roadblock, you can't say that's not possible. The other thing is there's a lot of anger in the NDIS space at the moment. We can't be angry. We can be passionate. We can be very, very vocal about things that are not fair, but going and having a fist fight with a government isn't going to solve your solutions. So what we've got to do is how do I myself with the resources? Can I learn? So can I research? Can I talk to people? Who can I come beside? Can someone mentor me and help me to help write a personal impact statement, help tell my story, help articulate what's wrong, help understand some of the injustice? And the NDIS is not making it easy for people. I had 2 emails the last 2 days trying to raise some concerns for my daughter, and some of the things that they're doing at the moment is really unfair and near bullying tactics, where I got an email yesterday and the day before, if you don't reply by 4 o'clock tomorrow, we're closing your case. And I wrote to them and said, 1, I work full time. 2, I got a disability. 3, phone call isn't my preference to communicate with people. That's why I wrote a complaint and sent you an email. I said, I've communicated to you. You now have a responsibility to work through that concern. What I see though is people going, I've tried once, I've given up.
And let's be frank, that's what the NDIS and the government want.
I agree with you.
They want people to give up.
I agree with you, Kate. It's the easy way to get to 8% in the scheme. And that is exactly what is happening at the moment. What scares me the most is the people that are most vulnerable, the people that don't cost the scheme the most money, where there's the least fraud, which is children and young people that need some early intervention. There's a big black hole that people aren't being helped. And if my daughter had the supports between that age, our life would be very different. And it's not fair. People aren't privileged like I was. Like my wife worked full time to pay for my daughter's support. It cost us $40,000 a year for 7 years so she could get therapy. And our first plan for her was $7,000. It didn't even cover therapy. And
Your story sounds very similar to mine, Jeremy.
And it's not fair. It's not fair. But what we've got to do is find a way, 1, to have someone believe you, 2, to have someone to listen, and 3, don't give up until someone does. And reach out. There is so many advocacy services out at the moment that do some really good work. and that do want to champion with you. So you've got people with Disability Australia, you've got a lot of other people in the housing space like SDA services and things that want to help. And if you can't find that, look for people like me on Facebook and LinkedIn and ask a question. Like, I'm not going to tell people to go away. I'm going to go and sit and search for a couple of hours and find somewhere for them to talk to, because that's what we need to do as a disability community. Is we need to help each other. What we're realizing at the moment is that there's not a lot of places for people with disability to actually learn and to educate and to actually grow their understanding. There's a lot of people selling them a product. There's a lot of people spruiking a new thing. There's not a lot of people saying, this is how you can navigate a really uncomfortable and difficult path. And that's what we've got to do better. I think protests are good, and I've done my fair share of protests. I think that lobbying government is important, and I do that daily. But we've got to do it in a way that doesn't kill our soul, that doesn't make us so bitter and angry for a service that actually keeps me out of hospital and keeps my daughter alive. We've got to be grateful for what's there, but we've also got to be strongly fighting for what's not right. And so that's a really long way with don't give up and find someone to talk to. And when you're getting those letters in the mail, I got two that came home today that said, yesterday, they're sitting in the mail for Jenna, and it said, we've received your complaint, your change of circumstance from the 21st of March or something. We're going to review it in 21 days and give you an outcome. That was the 28th of May yesterday. So we know that the she will automatically close that because beyond 21 days and they haven't dealt that. Now, other people don't. They will go, the NDIS has responded to me, I'm going to be expecting a phone call. And the reality is you're not going to get a phone call. What I'm going to do is photocopy those and escalate that as a complaint and state that you promised to call me in 21 days. That should have been in April. Why haven't you done that? Why hasn't my daughter got the support she needs? And those are the things that we've got to constantly do. We're in a really good time to do that because it's a scary time with 3 new ministers, but it's a very good time with 3 new ministers because we have the opportunity to educate around these are the black holes. These are the cohorts that aren't being listened to. This is a sector, for example, specialist disability accommodation. This is how I can educate you on the housing and how it's not working and the market that you're not addressing. And I think that we've got to educate the government as it's learning to grow and navigate itself and going, these are the problems that you're facing. One of the biggest things that the previous minister did wrong, in my opinion, was, and I know that we've got a lot of fraud in the news at the moment, but we highlighted how bad the sector was, but we didn't balance that with good.
Yeah.
And there is so many providers and single operators and self-employees that are doing an amazing job helping people with disability. And we need to be telling that story because most people, ethical, are doing a wonderful job and are doing it for the right reasons. And without those people knocking on my door every day, I'd be in hospital and I wouldn't survive. And we've got to tell that story. It's not sensationalized. It's not going to get on the Australian and ABC, but we've got to somehow go, how do we cut through and tell that story? Because that's an important narrative to change for the Australian population.
Absolutely, totally agree with you, Jeramy. What are your hopes for the future, both yourself personally and for the disability community?
I hope I don't have to fight as much for what should be a basic human right. And conversely, I hope the community doesn't need, people with disability don't need to fight. And I think we have an amazing opportunity, 12 months too late, but we have an amazing opportunity now for the next generation of children and people that need early intervention with foundational supports to get the scheme right. We've got an opportunity to put the right funding, get a model there, and to make sure that there's therapeutic supports and there's this very intense early intervention. And that's what I hope we get right. That doesn't help me in my job today, but if we get that right, I've seen the modeling. You get that right, we're going to get to an 8 or a 10% growth in scheme. But we also need to be realistic, and that people with disability aren't just going to disappear. We're not just going to die. Like, we've got to look at things with a common sense lens, that with new modern health, with medications, with the NDIS, we're living longer, we're healthier, and we're going to need supports longer. There is going to be an impulse on government to support people with disability, and we need to understand and get behind that there needs to be ongoing supports. I think there is a lack of understanding in government, both state and federal, in the NDIS and the NDIA, on the amount of support a participant needs. They definitely don't have the roadmap and the journey right of someone entering the scheme, and it feels like it's a roadblock rather than a journey at the moment. And so what my hope is if someone genuinely has a need for disability, which is a basic human right to get supports and to be looked after, that they are treated with dignity, they're treated with respect, that they're believed, and that they go through a journey of getting the supports they need. Because the most dehumanizing thing in the world is not being believed, is having to explain what you have to live with every day, is having to go to 5 different doctors and get letters to say 5 different ways of what is wrong with you. And that is so backwards. We should come with a mindset of, 1, we should be believed, but 2, if we want an outcome where a person with disability can potentially one day exit the scheme, let's invest early. And if I've got the appropriate supports, if I've got the appropriate assistive technology, if I've got the appropriate wheelchair or mobility aid, if I've balanced the appropriate supports I need to help me around the house, if we build a purpose-built specialist disability accommodation that meets the person's need, you will see a reduction in cost, because you've met the person's need, you've heard them, and they will be healthier, they'll be happier, and they'll be travelling along. Because of the NDIS, I can work, but I still have to fight every day to keep it. And
just a reduction on that, but it's a reduction on the health system because you're not in the hospital. There's reductions everywhere.
Yeah, and we're not doing the mathematics on that yet. We're not modelling the real true cost of getting disability supports right. We're seeing it as one cost of the NDIS, and you're exactly right. The cost on the states, which federal governments chip into, and all of these things, the ripple effect is enormous. And I think that we need to start seeing people holistically. We need to start seeing a person's life. And I say that, like, disability housing, if you provide adequate housing to a person, you're not just building a house, you're building somewhere that enables them to start a magnificent community that connects them to the local amenities, hospital, shops, doctors, and things like that are important. But that's sort of a normal basic human right. But you're connecting them to friends, to family, to work, to opportunity, to community. And we don't look at disability like that yet. And we don't see that meeting a basic human right and coming back to the fundamentals of what we exist for can enable so much more. And if we move beyond, and I don't think we have, if we move beyond, we build group homes, and if we move beyond, we do supported employment, and if we move beyond, we're going to fund someone for core supports. And if we stop talking the language of government, and we stop talking about the language of disability and we start talking about what possibility could be, we can start seeing a real difference in individual lives. And when we see that real difference, there's a few things. There's an economic benefit, but what we haven't talked about yet is that people with disability have so much to give to society. They have so much value add to the education system, to the employment system. I learn something new every day. I go and meet someone with a disability in the community, and they enrich and they grow and they challenge the way I think, even as a person with a disability, and I do something different tomorrow. And that the human capital that we have in these amazing people with disability in Australia, we should be embracing that and celebrating what it can give back to our country, because it's a gift and we should see it as that.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think, Jen, you would agree, these podcasts have been an absolute gift to us.
I have.
We are learning so much every day, and it started off navigating disability. And after a few different podcasts, we learnt that the dis actually doesn't even belong there. It's all about everybody has ability, everybody has potential, everybody has something to give. So let's look at it from that perspective rather than what they can't do. Jeramy, thank you so much for your insights today. It's been wonderful to speak to you. We will share your details on social media so people can reach out if they want to. Once again, thank you. Have a great day.
Oh, wonderful. Really appreciate it, Kate and
Thanks,
Jen. It's been a
Jeremy.
lovely conversation. Thanks so much.
Thank you.